part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane,
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
You're listening to the Krypton Report.
Welcome to the Krypton Report podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, the Superman in blue, and with me tonight is not that lovable man in all red with the cuddly cheeks that you just want to squeeze like Santa Claus. I have someone else that's fun to talk to. That's right. I have a new friend. That's right. I make friends. And she is an awesome cosplayer. And I'd like to welcome Kara to the show. Welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
So far, so good.
We've been trying to do this for about a month and a half now, almost 2 months, I think.
Yes.
But eventually we just kind of said, you know what, wait till November, or we started in November. We said, we'll wait till January because December is crazy.
Absolutely.
But it all started. Kara here posted a picture. I've been following her for a while because I liked her cosplays, and it was a cool Supergirl costume that she had done. I'll let her talk more about it. And I was like, that's awesome. And then we just were chatting, and I was like, you know what, you should come onto the podcast and chat about it. So we're always happy to bring on lovers of the family of L.
This does seem like the appropriate place to discuss that particular cosplay.
It does. It is. But first, since you did do a Supergirl cosplay, you must love the character.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not just because, of course, that's my name, but which, you know, I didn't know actually until I was almost an adult. But eventually I kind of fell into the Supergirl TV show on the CW and just absolutely fell in love with it.
How excited were you when they called her Kara?
You know, what's funny is I came in really late to the fandom. Like, I think the show was on like its last season when I finally found it, just because of how life goes, you know?
I understand
So
life.
I'm kind of disappointed I didn't get to be part of like the whole journey, but it was a lot of fun.
I just, you know, because, you know, when you get to share a cool name with a superhero, it's always kind of fun, like sweet. Like, you know, my son, his name is Solomon. So like when we were watching Shazam, they're like, Wisdom of Solomon. He's like, that's right. That's right. And Wisdom of me. You know, and then it's one of those things like we joke sometimes about the whole name Kara thing because, you know, my biggest Supergirl growing up was, of course, from the animated series where they called her Kara, and then on Smallville it was Kara, and then when Supergirl the show came, they were like Kara. I was like, huh? But then I was like, you know what? That makes more sense. And I was like, and then you know they carried it into the Flash movie, and I was like, yeah, it makes sense. It works for me.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like a more modern thing or something, but I'm surprised I didn't realize it was Kara in Smallville, because I loved that show when that came out too. I think I fell out of watching towards the later seasons though, which I think is when she showed up.
She showed up in 7.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your fandom. Like, you know, you can talk about just geek culture fandom period, but like your connection with this particular, like with Supergirl and stuff. Like, where do you think it begins with you? Where does the journey start for you?
Well, I didn't know much about her during my youth. I did know of Superman, of course, because he was big. And I remember when I was a kid, like the death of Superman was like this big, big deal. Like it made the news. And I remember we were supposed to go down to like the comic shop and they were going to do like a special event for the death of Superman. And then, of course, my dad's car breaks down. So I missed out on that experience.
Dang it, parents' cars.
Exactly. And then, but gosh, I remember going down to the comic store because honestly, I grew up in a small town in Alaska, and we didn't have like a lot to do.
Well, that's
we
exciting
had, like,
right there. We
had like a roller rink and a comic store, right?
Were you like, hey, I grew up where the Fortress of Solitude is?
Yeah, just about, right? So, yeah, I remember going to the comic store after the death of Superman and seeing the new comics that came out with like the Superboy and the Man of Steel and the Electro Superman. Oh, and the Cyborg Superman. That guy was kind of creepy.
Yep.
So, But then, you grow up and you get busy with life and you're doing your job and all that fun stuff, and kind of fell out of it. And I remember it was like 10 years ago, we have this local um, Halloween 5K thing. And I have a friend who did a Poison Ivy cosplay.
Ooh.
And we were talking, and I was like, I wanted to do Supergirl for this run. And at the time, because it was 2013, like all we really had was like 1984 Supergirl costumes, or like the sexy Supergirl or cheerleader Supergirls. And like, I just did not care much for those costumes, and
Yeah,
I just never did it.
I just want to say, I just feel like as much as certain Supergirl stories are great, I don't really like a lot of the art where they made it like you said, like a cheerleading style, or really like over sexualized costume where it makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I just didn't do it then. Kind of again forgot about it. Life happens, and then I start getting into cosplay because I got big into the Star Trek community, and I start learning how to actually like sew and make my own like costumes. And so then it comes up again, and like I've finished watching Supergirl the series. I found somebody, actually Polaris Designs sells a pattern for the Supergirl costume from the CW show, and that's where I picked up the pattern from. And I was like, I'm going to do this for this race. I'm going to finally make this like dream come true. And so I worked so hard for like 2 solid months, just locked away in my like sewing dungeon basement, working on this thing, sweating over details, late nights. And I managed to get it done. I'm talking like I'm like sewing the boots by hand, like
Wow.
almost the night before. And I ran this 5K race. My friend insisted that I stay for the costume contest. I ended up winning third place, which is a big surprise.
That's awesome.
And first place was like Ken from the Barbie movie, and I can't blame that. That was an amazing costume. And then I ended up running another 5K for work in the same costume. People loved it there too. It was a great experience. A lot of work, very stressful, but it was so fun.
It sounds like an awesome experience.
It is. And I gotta say, if you're like a Superman or Supergirl fan, or almost any superhero, like especially when you like make your own cape, because that's like it's like 10 yards of materials like all the way across my living room. It was crazy, this big project it was. Um I mean, I sweated over the details. There's particular ways they like made the seams for these characters.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you put that cape on is just an incredible experience.
I will be honest. I will share this with everybody. I've wanted to make my own Superman suit for years, but I'm scared. Because it's one of those things like I don't want to start and completely mess up. Because I used to know how to use a sewing machine. And then the little bit of sewing that I do it all by hand. And I tried to sew like just a pillowcase, and I couldn't do it on a sewing machine. And I was like, crap. Now, my wife, a couple years back, made me a Jedi costume for my birthday. And it looks awesome. It was kind of more along the lines of what my interpretation kind of would be, to do more of like if Anakin had been Darth Vader as Anakin and not in the suit. So darker browns, more black. And so we've talked about it, but yeah, I've always been very nervous because it's one of those things like it means a lot. So I don't really want to screw it up, and I hesitate on it.
Yeah, I totally get that.
So I've always kind of been nervous because I've wanted to make my own little tweaks, because there's certain elements that I like and certain elements I'd like to bring out in a costume compared to how some, costumes do it. But I really liked and that was my daughter throwing a little fit because she's crazy. My little special Supergirl.
Yes.
I got so just talking about her, and we're talking about costumes. Back when we were living before we bought the house we live in now, there's a little video I made of her to the Supergirl music, just running because we lived out and there was like a cornfield behind the house, and I had bought her the DC superhero girls costume.
Oh, that's
for
fun.
Supergirl. and we did like a little photo shoot, just her and I playing and outside and stuff. So, but what I was gonna say is, I really loved the Kara. You know, the her in the pants was cool, but I really liked the way they did the skirt costume on Supergirl.
Yes,
I
I
thought it was
agree.
just a really cool way of doing that look and that style. So I really like when people pull off that costume.
Yeah, it was a really great modern update. You know, you got that little extra texture like they put on modern superhero costumes, but it still really pays homage to like the origin again without being like overly sexy. But at the same time, I think I remember like the very first episode, they did this whole like costume try-on where they kind of got to play with some of the other style Supergirl costumes. And if anyone in your audience hasn't seen that first episode, like that is so fun. You almost have to see that.
It is great because it throws back different like iterations of her costume. Like I don't know if you've ever seen um one of the behind the scenes of one of the earlier Supergirl the movie costumes, where it was more based on the current comics where she looked more athletic. Have you ever seen it?
No, I don't think I have. I might
Okay,
have to
I'll
look that
find it
up.
for you. I'll send it to you. I'll drop it for you here in a second. It's I'm pulling up the pictures right now on your Twitter X, where it shows you making your costume, and
Yes.
just it's really, I mean, it is a great looking costume.
Oh my gosh, there are so many more pictures. I had to like select only a handful.
She's like, there's like 30,000. I only picked 2.
It feels like it. If you scroll through my phone, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, see, here's one of you, and it's like for the race. You're number 273.
Yes.
So, what was the race for?
I believe it raised money for a local group, but I don't remember who because I think it changed since the first time I raised it. It used to raise money for like a father's group or something like that, but I'm not sure if that's still the case.
That is something that my old job kind of did for the community. For they would do like fundraiser type things like that, and I always signed up for it just because it got me off work for like 2 hours. But I always like to help a good cause too.
Yes.
So,
And there were so many people in the race. It was so exciting. And then I approached the finish line and I got announced, here comes Supergirl. And of course, after like, that gives you the energy to really push yourself and get that extra like burst of speed at the end.
doesn't it make you feel good? No, like just in general, when people like call you like by your character or just in general, because like, okay, for today, I had to go to work and I had to go down to the courthouse to testify and everything. And I have my messenger bag and like I'm wearing, just looking, nice and presentable. And on my messenger bag, I have a Superman symbol patch. And the one lawyer, I know her well, she goes, "Oh, Clark Kent's here." And it just kind of made me smile and feel good about myself, like kind of, puff up your chest, like, yeah, I'm here, feel good, and like I'm constantly like, right now I'm wearing a Superman shirt. Like I always have a Superman shirt on. There's one shirt that I wear, and when I wear it, people will actually refer to me, "Oh, look, it's Superman," just because it looks more, I don't know, it looks more customized than all my other ones, is what my wife said. So it just always kind of makes me smile and feel good, and so yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. I have a couple of shirts like that too, just with the S on it. Usually identified as Superman, but same difference, right?
It is, and see, I really try a lot of times, like to focus on, like I'm not a huge fan of when they make girl shirts that are pink with the Superman or super symbol on it. It's like, oh, it's Supergirl. I'm like, technically, no, the symbol is still hers. It's just who's wearing it is how you refer to it, because it
Yes.
is their family symbol. And that brings me back to like what the CW did with Supergirl is they found a way to do the symbol correctly, but with a slight altercation so that when you see it, that's Supergirl.
Yes. Yeah, if you
And
have them stand next to each other.
I really liked that. Like I really liked that I always like when they do a version of the characters, Superman or Supergirl, and they put a slight tweak to the symbol so that when you see it, you know what actor portrayal version it is.
Yes.
And I feel bad because Tom Welling never really got that in his version, and Tyler Hoechlin really hasn't got that either. But Supergirl on the CW, she did get that in a really great way.
Yeah, it was so good.
Now you said you hadn't. We're gonna shift here in a few minutes because I do want to talk about your other big cosplaying love because I think it's dope. But what is it about the character that you like that made you want to cosplay? Supergirl. Was it something about the character? Or is it just like, oh, it's something people know, or is there something that really drew you to the character?
Well, to be honest, the first time when I very originally wanted to do it in like 2013, it was just like, this is just fun. It's cute. I've always kind of had a connection to like the super, like, because, okay, I have a brother. And
Mm-hmm.
so my favorite color is red. My favorite brother's favorite color is blue. And so I would get like Superman, Supergirl stuff, and my brother would get Batman stuff. And so I've kind of always had that like pseudo history with it. And like, again, I was familiar with the comics, even though I didn't actually read very many of them, to be honest, just because it's like I couldn't afford them, to be honest. So it was like I would go down to the shop and just look at it and read about it in other places.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, after I actually got into the like series, and I just fell in love with the story of Kara in the series and like her journey. And like I kind of surprised myself with how emotional I got about the ending because it was such an important part of her story that she became one person instead of having to be these two separate people. And I kind of identify with that with some of my
Mm-hmm.
struggles in life.
Mm-hmm.
So for me it became a very personal thing. It was also about finding like strength in myself. Um and I could find it through this hero and identify with him. So it became more than just a fun costume at that point. It became a goal. It became like, I don't know, it just became about I don't know, becoming my whole self as well, I guess. And yeah, that was it's quite a personal journey along with following on with this character and then producing this costume and all that. So yeah, it was a big deal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I think that's what a lot of these characters are supposed to stand for, is something for us and something that we feel like. People always say, well, Batman's easier to identify with, because he's human, and Superman's not easy to identify with. And I'm always like, no. As I die here coughing. I always, yep. Ugh, pardon me. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm still alive, people. I'm still alive. I promise. I think it was just it's the good nature of Superman of always wanting to do what's right and stand up for what's right and be good to people that always kind of made me love the character and really like idolize the character. People will say, "Oh, you like Superman because of all the powers," and I'm like, "Well, the powers are cool, okay? Don't get me wrong, but it's who the character is and why I'm drawn to the character."
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, again, because like I said, I grew up in Alaska. So when I was like 18 or so, I moved down here. I live in the Chicago area now. And kind of like Kara did, I'm not an alien, of course, but it almost feels that way because I come from such a different place that the people around here don't understand where I came from. You
Mm.
talk to people, they have these bizarre ideas about like Alaska, this wondrous, glorious place that's completely wildlife. And it's like, well, that's not really true. And I can't even begin to describe what it's like to live there. And I wish I could because um, I feel like it's an experience a lot of people would enjoy and learn from. So again, I similarly I feel like I come from such a different life, a different world, and I'm trying to like fit in this whole other place, this big city. So that too I also connect with, and I imagine a lot of people have like these little pieces of like these character stories that they really, feel in their lives, and that's what draws them to those stories.
I would not doubt it. Now, you are a Superman fan as well. So here's
Yes.
a random question. Trunks or no trunks?
Oh my gosh, what's so funny is I've been caught up in some of the online talk about the Superman legacy, and I know that is a hot button issue.
Right?
Um,
That's what divides the fandom. I swear.
that is so tough because I do love some of the classic outfits, but like these newer ones, like with my gosh, I forgot his name, the Man of Steel um version, Tyler Hoechlin's version, like they look incredible and they drop the trunks off. At the same time, I do love, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'm forgetting these actors' names, but the one who was in Superman Returns.
Brandon Routh.
Yes, because he's so good and I feel so bad for him. He deserves so much better.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, his I believe had the trunks, right? And
yep.
Yeah. And of course, the original Superman Returns. Christopher Reeves. Yeah. Just I don't know. That's tough. I can't make that decision.
See, it is tough. I think my thing is I think the Henry Cavill suit always looked kind of interesting and odd to some people because the belt, like there wasn't a belt per se. Yes. But then the Tyler's suits, they used the red belt style, which really helped and made it look fine. I think for me, the trunks I feel are outdated. Like most people don't even know that where they originate from and what they're supposed to be. And I just feel like it's not needed. Like nobody's fighting to put trunks back on Batman. Okay.
Right. Yes.
But for some reason, everyone wants to put them on Superman. I mean, yes, they pulled it off with Brandon Routh really well on Crisis. But I feel it worked because of the whole style of that character there. But with Superman Legacy, I'm not sure what I want from that suit. In all honesty, I would be fine with no trunks. I would like the symbol back on the cape, but I like the way they did it in Krypton, the TV series, with the black symbol on the back.
Interesting.
Because I've never been a fan of the solid gold, like all yellow, all gold symbol, because it just looked kind of like, why is it one color?
I can see that.
But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what they pull off, what they bring out for the live action suit for that movie, and for the new Supergirl movie they're going to make.
I'm very intrigued by that as well. Though I do admit I did enjoy Supergirl's portrayal in the Flash movie, for all its minor faults.
I think one of the biggest sins that movie committed was they gave us this character, and then they did her a big disservice in the film itself with the idea promise to do something more in the future.
Yeah. Kind of snatched that rug out from under us right at the end.
And I don't like in movies where they like, hey, we're going to, do this a little bit with the character, but well, don't worry, in the future, we're really going to do something. Well, we never know if we're going to have that future.
Yeah.
So it was, but I liked her suit in that. Even with all the blue that's in it, I think it still worked very well.
Yeah, that definitely feels like it comes from a similar place as the Man of Steel suit, where it feels very much like a space suit, a big solid jumpsuit kind of idea. And that's cool in its own too. And the girl, again, I cannot remember these actors' names. I'm sorry. Who played it?
You don't have to apologize.
She was pretty amazing as the character. Like she felt like powerful, but at the same time, she had this empathy for the people, and the way she went absolutely feral when she heard Zod killed Kal-El, that was so perfect for that character.
It was, because I've come to really like the Supergirl character more and more when you get into the idea that this was a young girl who was given a mission, a purpose.
Yes.
and that she was old enough to have lived and knew her home world, and then it's all gone. The only person she's left is her baby cousin, but then to come to find out that her whole mission for existence and purpose is gone.
Yeah,
And
that's traumatic.
he doesn't need her. She kind of needs him. But then after a little while, where does she fit in?
Yes.
You know, I think that's such a it's a tragedy. Like, you know, in a way, Superman's character is defined by tragedy because of the inciting incident, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, the tragedy really doesn't affect him the way that other tragedy affects other characters. You know, he lost a whole planet that he never knew and a people he never knew. So he feels disconnected and not part of it. But Kara had all that and lost it. So that, you know, they find each other, and that's a strong story that I really appreciate from the different perspectives of when people tell the story.
Yes.
Now, do you read comics?
I do periodically. I actually have on my nightstand a collected works of like Supergirl comics I need to get through, and a couple of Star Trek comic books as well. I did read the whole Doomsday series eventually when I finally was able to afford it. And then I have no idea where it went. I don't know if one of my prior relationships ran off with it or disappeared it.
I hear you. I hear you on that, because I had some things that I had an ex-fiance who we had things we were gonna move in together and everything. And a bowl box of my stuff went missing and got damaged, and yeah, we don't talk about it because it's energy. But
Yeah. And so now I'm trying to like replace it, and I don't know which version's the right one to buy anymore. So I just need to like find it in like a used bookstore or something so I get the right one.
that's a big thing for me. Is I love buying used books, especially like used trades. I just feel like
Yeah.
there's a I don't know, there's something about it. Like, it's worn down, you feel good. It's comfort food in a sense.
And to be honest, you pretty much save it from the trash.
Yep, yeah. You're rescuing it, you know.
Yeah.
Now, have you read the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow story? That supposedly the movie's supposed to be based on, but I don't know. They're using that title. But have you read it?
I don't think I have.
I would check it out. It's good. It's
All
kind of a
right.
different perspective of just her having a mission. It's one I appreciated that story. And of course, there was the run where she became a Red Lantern. That was interesting because of the rage that she had from losing Krypton.
Yeah, I can see that. I always like those almost like those alternate like universe type stories. Like I liked like the Red Sun,
Mm-hmm.
and in the series they had a version of that where a clone essentially of Kara ends up in a made up country that's supposed to sound like Russia and becomes like this evil Supergirl kind of story. Like those are fun to read. It's just a like, kind of like it almost gives you a better perspective on the character by looking at them through a different lens.
I agree. I I am open to interpretations when they're Elseworld stories, when they change things about a character, because like you said, it gives you that perspective of what if this happened, or this lens, or this tweak on the character.
Yes.
One of the biggest kind of letdowns was the final season of Young Justice. You find out that Darkseid had Kara and raised her as a Fury, and it's
Oh, geez.
teased, and then they never went into the next season. So that would have been interesting to see. Now, we're gonna about the show. Did you have a favorite season of the series?
Oh boy. Because usually it's like the series was like grouped up in like who are the big bads, I would say. So that's tough. It was definitely interesting when Lex Luthor showed up. And because there's so much like weight and storytelling put into Lex Luthor already, it's like, how do you innovate? How do you not like do the same thing over again kind of thing? So I'm sure that was a tough thing to write for them, but it was good, I think. Especially because I didn't see Superman 3 and 4 until very recently when I realized that the son of Lex Luthor and what Superman 4 ended up playing Lex Luthor in the CW Supergirl series. I thought that was too funny.
And he surprised me. I really liked John Cryer as Lex when he first showed up. And then I feel like in the final season, I feel like there was some good stuff that was done in the final season, but I feel like there was some stuff that was just kind of drug on and they kind of started to diminish Lex.
Yeah.
But you're talking about 3 and 4. So I did not watch Superman 3 until probably 20. Oh God, I admit this, like I really do, and there's reasons for it, but it was like 2015, I think, because they never had it at the video store. It was always checked out or lost, and then it was you can never find it. And then I kept hearing how bad it was and mixed things. But then when I bought the box set on Blu-ray, I watched them all, and yeah, I actually prefer Superman 4 over Superman 3. Part of it's because I swear to God, it was on TV every day when I was a child on like basic cable. So it was always interesting that, but Superman 3 is like half a good movie. And anyone who wants to debate that with me is welcome to message me and we can talk about it.
Now, which one? I can't remember now. One of them had Superman go bad. Was that 3 or 4?
3.
3. That was good.
See, that part's good. It's all the Richard Pryor stuff that I feel like we're in a different movie.
Yes, it does feel very foreign. And then they kind of try to mesh them together.
Yeah, it felt that they were like compacting 2 films to one and trying to shift the tone, because when it's not like it's the Smallville, the Lana Lang stuff, it's really good.
Yes.
It's really good. Now, we're going to segue and talk about something different on the show, because not only is Kara a Supergirl fan, and she even looks like Supergirl. I could see her being Supergirl. She is also a big Star Trek fan.
Yeah, just a little bit.
And that's kind of, I'm a casual Star Trek fan. I do enjoy it. I was watching I just blanked. See, now I'm blinking. The one with Anson Mount as Pike.
Strange New Worlds, yes.
Yeah, Strange New Worlds. I watched the first season and I just didn't watch the second season yet. I was enjoying that. But so with that, I see that you have a lot of different Star Trek cosplays, and they're all great. First of all,
oh yes.
What got you into cosplaying first? Let's just start there.
It was definitely it was a big part of that was being welcomed into the Star Trek community. It was something that was a big deal when I was a kid, because again, and I hate to keep going back there for content essentially, but growing up in Alaska, we didn't get a lot of TV channels. So because literally the mountains would block the signal. So one of the channels we did get was, I believe, NBC, and our family would actually get together and we'd watch like the Next Generation's new episodes when they'd come out, and I think that was on Saturdays. And so it was one of those things that we did as a family, and I could talk about it with my friends. And then at some point I somehow managed to get involved with the collectible card game. Like, that was fun to collect, was all these cards with Star Trek characters on them. That was supposed to be a game that I think I've only played like twice. And I was a fan throughout most of high school. I remember when the UPN came along, that was a huge deal. I could actually get that channel. It's one of the first shows I watched on a TV in my own room when I got given the family's old, like, and I'm talking, this TV had a UHF dial. Like, yes. This is an old thing.
Hey, that was my first TV. It was a small TV, but it had a UHF, and it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, just a big clunk, clunk, clunk to switch channels.
You couldn't change the channel without waking up the house.
Yes. Had to tweak your rabbit ears just right to get those channels.
So, rabbit ears, kids, these metal things that poked out the back of the TV that you had to turn to pick up the analog signal in the air before they switched it to a digital signal.
Yes. Good old days. Sort of. But yeah, and Voyager came on the air in UPN, and we got to meet Captain Janeway, and having a woman captain was such a huge deal. But again, then I got out of school, I moved to Chicago, I kind of fell out of the fandom. Star Trek kept going for a while, and it wasn't until, oh gosh, it was like 5, 6 years ago, I discovered a box of my Star Trek cards, and I started like exploring those again. And now you can like now I'm a full grown adult, and I don't have to buy just like the simple little booster packs. You can go on eBay and you can buy an entire box of them. And so I had some fun trying to rebuild a collection a little bit, and found out about Twitter, and that there's a Star Trek like whole land of this going on Twitter. And um I think the first account I found was like the real Gold Ducat, where he'd like make fun of like politics and stuff in through the perspective of this Cardassian administrator. Yeah, and then I started to explore like playing these like fake characters, and then eventually I started to make an account for like myself, and I met some friends, and it all started like literally with like one hoodie I got first, and then I got like one uniform and had fun, and people like really liked the other people partaking in this, and I guess my pictures were fun and goofy, and then it was another and another, and now I have an embarrassing number of Star Trek uniforms in my storage room over here.
There's no such thing as an embarrassing number of anything in fandom. I have a ridiculously amount, like almost every T-shirt I own is a Superman T-shirt, and that's why like every day I have one in some form. So don't even get me started. You love it, you praise it, you rock it. Okay, you do not have to be ashamed of your fandom on this podcast.
That's good.
That's how we roll. Okay.
It's funny because I had a family member who was like, "Why do you buy those things? You only get to wear them once or twice." Like, you know what? You'd be surprised how often I get to wear these things these days.
You're like, you know what? I go home, and when I come home from work, I slip into this. Okay, and I walk around my house. You know why? Because I feel good about it. Like I have a really cheaply homemade Superman costume that I made years ago for this like little fan film thing I did. It was just for fun, me just goofing, but I love it. And one day it was windy outside. I came home, I slipped that sucker on. I walked down to the bus stop and just stood there with my cape blowing in the wind, picking my kids up from the bus. So, maybe that you just want to like go through the McDonald's drive-thru or something, in Star Trek uniform. We
You know
dressed up
what?
as we dressed up as Batman characters one time and did that.
Oh man, that would be so fun. It's it's funny actually. First of all, you're right, because I do occasionally have like these bad days, and if I have like a really crappy day, I can come home and I can put on the Star Trek uniform and I can do something silly and whatever, and I can feel better about myself or bring a different perspective. But now that you mentioned the drive-through, when I did the race in my Supergirl costume, I do have to share. I don't think I've told anybody this one.
Sweet.
I actually, because I didn't really have like breakfast that day, and I did a 5K, and then like waited around in this bar for, this costume contest, and it's like it's time to like finally go home, and I hop in the car and like I'm gonna go drive through the McDonald's drive-through, and so I finally pull up to get my order, and this guy like looks at me, he's a big dude too, and he's like, "Wow." He pretty much goes like, not only do you drive a car like that, I drive a sports car. You dress up like he said superwoman, because some people make that mistake. It's like, can I hang out with you? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go.
You're like, why not?
Right? It was just sweet and funny, and I just thought that was just such a fun story, just how that just happened. Some people, you never know where you're going to find like a fan is really going to get really like excited about what you've done.
I mean, that's a great story. I mean, have you had any really great like just experiences in your costumes, like meeting people or do you go to conventions and stuff?
I have been to like 1.5 conventions.
You had to explain the half.
Because I got invited to like this guy was a friend of mine. It was I forget, he participated in the convention. He had like a booth and he was doing like a talk, and so he invited me to come like check it out. So I like, it's like not like I paid to get in and I didn't like stay around all day, but I hung out with him and I like got to walk around. And um yeah, I wore one of my Star Trek uniforms and people came up and took pictures with me. And let's see, I haven't really met like any celebrities yet. I think because my timing is just terrible.
You're like, crap.
Yeah, I like the first one is like I came there like really late at night and like nobody was really there at the tables and it was just kind of fun to kind of look around. And the other one I came like on the very last day and I was mostly there to meet like friends I'd met online. And so I didn't really meet any celebrities there either, but the people I met were very excited about what I did. Um, in that case, I had dressed up as, if anyone in your audience knows, Seven of Nine from
Oh yeah,
from actually the
I feel like she's pretty famous just in fandom general. It's like
yes,
even if you're not a Star Wars person, you know who Han Solo is. I feel
right.
like even if you're not really into Star Trek, she's one of those that you kind of know.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't do the cat suit though. In my case, I did the leather jacket from Picard series,
It's a good
and
look.
yeah, and I had to learn how to do silicone casting so I could get that eyebrow ridge Borg module thing that she has. Um, so that was an experience. I'd never really worked with silicone in earnest like that before. That was a lot of experimentation, but I think it pulled it off pretty well considering I have no experience in that area. Um,
Hey, it's awesome you tried. I mean, I bet you did fine.
yeah, it's actually one thing I was terrified about when I did the Supergirl costume because, you know, some of them when they do the House of El Crest, especially on like the new Superman costumes, they like cast the entire S from urethane, and that is another substance I've never worked with, and I was terrified I was gonna have to figure out how to do that. Fortunately, a guy I know through the internet told me that somebody he knew who worked on the show said that the S's on the Supergirl costumes were for the most part screen printed. So that kind of took some pressure off. Um, so in my case, I just used a Cricut to cut out the S and did the ironed them on essentially, and they worked pretty well. Like they're bright and to the right size and look amazing.
I mean, yeah, it does look, your costume does look amazing. I like, so I was looking at some of your photos here on your Twitter. I still call it Twitter because I just feel weird saying X. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll be honest. um, and I really do like the blue. That's more from the more modern movies, just because I like the texture of the blue. And blue's my favorite color. I think it looks awesome. Not saying that your red and your gold don't look awesome as well, but the blue is really good.
I I actually I went through a lot of different did a lot of research to try to get hopefully the right blue and the right like kind of like tone. Um, one of the things I did end up doing is I guess they made a very limited run of Supergirl hoodies for Hot Topic. And we're talking, these are not Superman. They're literally as like a Supergirl because even the tag says Supergirl for the CW on the back of the hoodie.
Mm.
And I managed to get one of those used on eBay, which smelled like smoke. Um,
Don't worry, there's Febreze.
exactly. And but I wore it into Joanne Fabrics and I compared like actually I have pictures somewhere where I held it up to a variety of fabrics to find like the right like spandexy fabric that seemed to be in the right tone of blue. Because there are some that were much brighter. You know, there was some debate over whether the red and the cape was too bright, but also there's only a certain amount of like faux leather fabrics that they have available, so you kind of have to work with what you can get sometimes. So I'm hoping I did a decent job. But someday there's a company called Parallel Life Studios, and they make like the legit like screen printed fabric because the newer costumes have like this, I want to say silicone almost like texture to it
Hmm.
printed on top of it. A lot of superhero costumes have this, and they can actually do that. And so someday I want to actually purchase the correct stuff, but it's like something ridiculous, like $45 a yard. It is very expensive, and it has to be shipped from France. So
You're like, you know what? I like my costume, but not that much. I want to be able to wear it and not feel like I'm about to fall apart.
That's the thing. I actually discussed this with a friend who actually worked in Hollywood on the Blade movies. I found
Nice.
out. Um, and he's like, if that's going to make you happy, just do it. And I was like, wait a second. I'm going to run a 5K in this. Do I really want to buy $45 a yard fabric to then get all sweaty running in a 5K? It's like, that's probably not the best idea.
Yeah. You're like, this is my Supergirl for costume for when I just want to stand around and look good and take pictures. This is my
Right.
Supergirl when I have to go outside.
Exactly. And I did build it with the intention of this, I had to move in. It had to survive like taking this punishment. And it did. I'm very proud that it did. Um, the cape attachment in particular was very challenging, but I pulled it off. And let me tell
I
you,
would.
if you think running a 5K is hard, try doing it with about like 5 pounds of fabric hanging off the back of your neck.
I always love talking to people who do cosplay, who make their costumes. I mean, nothing against people who buy them, but I always feel like there's a cheapness to like, oh, that costume was great. Yeah, I bought it here.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I feel like with cosplay, like, making your costume, there's a connection that you have to, just to it, like to
Yes.
the costume, the process. It's like a work of art. Um,
And it's a lot of work. I mean, I admit a lot of my Star Trek costumes are purchased and they're still plenty fun. But yeah, the ones that I've made, I have a special connection to.
I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just nice when, I mean, not, you can go back and forth, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's always like, there was this one cosplayer I was talking to before, and everything she had was bought. And I was like, that's cool, but there's always something more interesting, um, when you have your connection to it.
I mean, to be honest, some people do amazing stuff with bot stuff. Like even my 7 of 9, a majority of the pieces are bought, but it's a matter of collecting them, putting them together, you know, how you make a costume out of these various pieces. Um, for example, there was one point when I was like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna have the time. So I purchased a bodysuit, like just in case I didn't get the proper one sewn. I ended up not using it, thankfully, because it didn't have, for example, one of the details I really wanted was the thumb holes, which I feel like are important.
Hmm.
Um, but if it came down to the last minute, like I would have been able to throw the S on that and go. But I'm glad I didn't have to.
Now, with Star Trek, what got you into Star Trek? Like, what was the first like Star Trek memory you have?
Oh my gosh, my first Star Trek memory was as a kid. Like it would be on after school, um, like the original series. And actually, one of my first memories is being terrified of one of the characters in the end credits, like this like green creepy alien face guy. Um, which, if you're a Star Trek fan, you know that's Baylock's creature. Um, like I remember that. I don't know. I think my dad used to watch it, but I don't have particular memories of actually sitting down to watch it. But he's also kind of terrible. He would not sit down and watch things. He would turn things on and then he would leave the room and go smoke. Um, so, but yeah, that would be my earliest memory of Star Trek was the original series being on like after school.
That's cool. I first kind of really came into knowing Star Trek was where my mom was watching The Next Generation, and I watched a lot of that with her, and of course, um, I watched some of the Deep Space Nine and Enterprise, and like some of the series. And I've watched it here and here. Now, like I said, I have an enjoyment for it. I just never got hooked. Like I like it, but I just never got as hooked into it as a lot of people have. Like I loved the J.J. Abrams movies. Um, that's basically because he was doing Star Trek as Star Wars, action adventure, but whatever. um,
Yes, a lot less diplomacy, that's for sure.
so, and I think there's definitely a different vibe, but yeah, I really enjoyed, and I still believe that the next gen movies really hold up well.
Oh yes, especially First Contact.
Yes. Um, so I enjoy those very much. So,
Well, I talk about it all the time on my Twitter, so
Yeah, I'm just kind of scrolling through because I was just really enjoying like the variety of Star Trek uniforms you have, and like one thing I like is each when you do the different colors representing the different factions, you've done them in different styles. It's
yes.
it's not like you have the same costume in the multiple colors. You have the different styles and the different colors. So
Yeah, like my only science is the blue one is only in the Kelvin timeline, which is of course the J.J. Abrams movies. I have a lot of the gold uniforms from the TNG and Deep Space Nine era. I have of course a couple of red ones from the original series era. Um, yeah, and gosh, I made myself because nobody makes a motion picture era uniform knockoff, so I had to make my own
you were like,
for
challenge accepted.
exactly. Yeah, it was such a strange and different uniform, and it sounded fun, and so I managed to do it.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. I mean, that's your passion and I mean, you got talent. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Thanks.
you're able to sew and make things, and that would be, I wish I had that skill. um, so it would be really great to be able to do. Now, don't want to keep you too long. I respect your time. Is there a cosplay costume that you want to do, or maybe one that you want to do but you don't feel you have the skills yet, like you're nervous to make it?
Oh,
Is there
you want
like,
to talk about one that I'm nervous to do? If you want to talk about that,
sure?
we go back to the DC universe. A costume that I actually a character I do enjoy is I do enjoy Power Girl, but her costume um takes a level of bodily confidence that I currently lack.
I know exactly what you're referring to because anytime it says Power Girl, and we all know where they go. I actually really liked the new 52 style that they did with Power Girl. Um, I always thought her costume, and I like what they're currently doing with Power Girl. Let's see if I
Yeah,
can.
she's a fascinating character, and I've seen so many different like iterations of her. Um, so there's a lot to choose from. But of course, I keep coming back to like that classic one where it's almost essentially like a one-piece bathing suit with a half cape draped over it, and the big so-called, as they say, boob window.
Yeah,
It's like it's iconic in its own right. But yes, they have done a lot more fun new things with them too.
and I feel like the sad thing with Power Girl is a lot of what her costume has been regulated to the boob window,
Yes.
and it becomes such a parody, and it's sad because her story is Supergirl's, but even more sad.
Yeah, exactly.
So in most stories, Power Girl is like the last survivor of her Earth. So not only did she go through the same process that Supergirl went through, she goes another step of being the only one to survive her Earth.
Yes.
So yeah, it gets tough.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, currently, like, it's interesting if you they've been doing some good one shots, and they have a mini series for Power Girl currently right now. And it's really interesting, just what they're doing with her character. It's good stuff, though. Good stuff.
Yes. I definitely got to catch up with some of the newer stuff with her.
Well, I mean, hey, if you want to do a Power Girl, do it.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can always.
Someday I think I need to do it before it just gets away from me because I don't know. It's always been there for a long time. Like I don't know, there's just something intriguing about that character, like her humor, you know, just how kind of badass she is at the same time. And then her uniform in and of itself is like iconic. But yeah, it's physically challenging.
I think there's different, like, with your skills and just the different styles. I think you could kind of come up with almost a unique. I don't want to say original, but like a unique tweak on the Power Girl costume. I think you could
I,
pull it off.
I could see that. Take a couple different concepts from a couple different ideas that they have.
Yeah, because I mean, some of them work well, and of course, it just depends on where you're going with it. But I think you could make a unique Power Girl suit.
I hope so.
All right. Well, for those listeners who are interested in your costumes and checking out, where would you turn them on social media to follow you?
Gosh, my primary pace is you can find me on Twitter. The username is Kara Amens, AMENS, and the username is at Amun's Raw, which is a whole long. It's a joke that goes way back. 'Cause I'm also a Stargate fan.
Who's not? I was talking. Side note: my son has become a Kurt Russell fan.
Oh my goodness!
Because he watched this year, like he just kept watching the Christmas Chronicles, and where he and I are watching Monarch. He's asking like, what other movies just Kurt Russell and Dad that I can watch? And I was like, well, there's Sky High that we watched, and then I'm like thinking, I'm like,
a good one.
And I'm like Stargate. I'm
Yes.
like that's a real good one. So I think we'll be watching Stargate again here soon.
And when I was a kid, Backdraft was a big deal movie, partially because I got family from Chicago, and now I know people in the fire service. So it's like Backdraft is still such a great movie.
It is a great movie. I made a comment about that the other day. We were watching something, and somebody like pulled a door open and exploded. I was like, have they ever seen Backdraft? I'm like, that's one of those movies I saw as a kid. I'm like, I saw that as a kid. Like,
Okay, now quick story again, because I'm here in Chicago and I'm in the fire service. There are guys who were firemen who were actually in the movie, and some of them still get residuals from that movie.
That's awesome.
Like a couple pennies a year or something like that, including I think my boss knew the guy who was at the very, very end of the movie who needed help getting his like jacket buckled up. Like his one line got him like residuals for like 40 years.
Yeah. If you have it's interesting. If you speak a line in a film, you immediately go from a day player or background actor to a character.
Yeah.
Just one line of dialogue. And that changes your whole pay bracket. It's crazy.
Right.
Get those residuals. I know all about that. I can tell you a story off mic. All right. So we're following her on Twitter. She is one of our friends that we follow on Twitter. So if you can't find her directly, just jump over to us and you can find her there. Any particular pictures, anything you want people to check out? Anything else you want to plug?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I have a Ko-Fi for donations, but I don't push that very much because I know everyone's in need these days. But it's helpful sometimes. I've occasionally had somebody who's like, I'll be like, oh man, this uniform would be so cool. And then somebody like send me some money for it. It's like, I don't even know how it's like, it just gets me very emotional because I don't know how to thank them properly. I feel like it's like, this is just a silly thing I do. I don't expect people to actually like send me money. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm just doing this for fun. But it's really sweet and I really appreciate it. So I want to say thank you to all those people who have. Otherwise, yeah, I'm mostly on Twitter. I'm definitely not on Threads. I'm kind of on Blue Sky if anybody's there.
We're on Blue Sky. I never post. I haven't figured it out. I just signed up for it.
Yeah, I need to be better about cross posting over there or just being there in general. But yes, I do exist over there. And yeah, I don't know. I have like a YouTube channel I keep meaning to like put content on, but I still haven't. So it's hard for me to say that you should go check me out there because there's nothing there yet to look at. So
follow her on Twitter, and then when the other stuff posts, you'll find out on Twitter, and you can go check it out there.
Definitely.
All right. Well, we just want to thank you for joining us and for the chat today. It's always nice to speak to, new friends, new fans, and get new insights. So remember, good listeners,
Look up in the sky.
We just want to say if you've enjoyed this podcast, please check out other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough Super Talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, The Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope.
Remember to check out Krypton Report on all social media platforms. Go to linktree.com/Krypton Report. You find all of our information.
I want to give a quick shout out to some of our other favorite podcasts from Press Play and other podcasting networks. Books with Brooks, the Fanfare podcast, which is a great movie rating podcast. Gravely Amusing with our best pal, Brian. I also want to shout out the other show, Brian the Guys, that I often guest on as one of the guys with our pal, Brian. Also check out The Confessing Heretics, where Jania talks about the abuse and things that she witnessed through growing up in the church and what shaped her future. I definitely recommend. It's a great podcast, but it's also for mature audiences.